Hello folks, today we're taking a look at a gaming desk. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a review of the Arozzi Arena Small gaming desk. If you're looking for a space efficient gaming desk without sacrificing functionality, this might just be the desk for you. Let's check out the features, the pros and the cons and whether it's worth your money. Now, it's worth noting early doors that desks like this are not the easiest things to film with, especially when using this talking head method of presentation that I like to use on my videos with products in front of me. Even more so especially when you are a first class tool like me and build it in your front room because you're renovating the workshop and then realise that it won't actually fit through the door afterwards when it comes to filming the video. I've recorded lots of footage of the desk in the front room though, so you can get a good visual of it and the building process, etc. But that's the reason that I don't have it with me right now while I do the final video. Now, desks are not something that you buy often, but when you do, it's a big purchase, as it's going to be the literal centerpiece of your setup. And there are lots of things to take into consideration when choosing a desk, which people don't always look into. And Arozzi are looking to make this an easy experience with their Arena range of desks. The first thing to consider is the size and dimensions of a desk. How much space do you have free to fit it in? Sometimes space is limited and you are restricted by this. So this small desk would be ideal for a smaller setup or space without compromising on functionality. Other factors are the build quality, surface colour and cable management options, which have been covered in all areas with this desk. The only thing that could be a major influencing factor of this desk is the price. It's not a cheap desk by any means at around the £160 price point. So the big question I'll be looking at to answer at the end of this video is it worth the price tag? Granted, there are much more expensive desks about there, and there are obviously some significantly cheaper desks out there. So there's lots to look at in terms of value for cost. The box is relatively small. Well, as small as it can be considering it has a desk in it. And that's thanks to the fact that the desktop comes in two pieces. Inside the box, you get everything you need to build the desk up. It's going to take a little bit of time to build it up, and like anything, it can be done on your own, but for a quicker setup, it might be worth getting someone to give you a hand. The packaging is nicely laid out with some cardboard strategically placed to keep things in place whilst transporting, which is nice to see as it prevents any unwanted scratches or marks right out of a box. As far as desks go, it's actually a pretty simple setup. Most of it is already done for you and the holes are all pre-drilled. You do get a user manual which is nice and clear, and you can even scan the QR code on the manual for a video tutorial if you want something more visual. To begin with, you need to mount these feet plates onto the legs themselves. All you need to do here is get the bag labelled A and then line up with the foot plate with the 4 holes on the bottom of the legs. Make sure it's facing the right way and then insert the screws. I'd recommend putting 2 in to begin with and tighten them a bit to keep it straight and true, and then you can add the others and then tighten them all. They do throw in a really handy little handled hex key tool too, which is much nicer than the little Allen keys that you usually get but end up lost in the junk drawer of doom. Once you have done this for both the legs, you need to turn them over, and this is where the extra pair of hands will be making life a little bit easier than how I'm doing it with a camera in my face at the same time. On the top part of the legs, you'll notice a box section with holes in it. Take the 2 longer metal strips and line them up with these holes here. The slimmer lip needs to face downwards towards the base, and the thicker lip upwards, as this has the mounting holes for fixing it to the tabletop. Using the bolts and washers from bag B, you can get to work screwing them together. I'd recommend fixing one side to both legs first and then doing the other side so you don't have any issues lining them up. Now you have a surprisingly solid set of legs ready to be mounted to the tabletop, which is what we are working on next. The tabletop comes in 2 pieces with lots of pre-drilled connectors on the base. Lay them flat on a flat surface and then using the 2 little metal points that you see here, you can line them up and push them together. Now you need to carefully turn over the legs and put them into the middle of a desk. Line it up with the 8 holes in the middle marked here. Using the bolts from the bag labelled C, you can start to screw them in. This is where you're going to need to pay attention to lining them up properly, and I'd recommend starting from the outside mounts and then work your way in. Be sure to make that the desktop is pushed flush together before finally screwing them tight. Now we get to mount the mesh netting that spans the length of the underside of the desk to store cables and extension leads, etc. to assist in tidying. For this, you need to put the 8 screws in from bag labelled D into these 8 holes marked here. They don't go in all the way as they hold the loops of the mesh netting that can be connected as you see here. It pulls quite tight to the desk, which is nice. Not too tight thankfully that it's unusable to work in though. Finally, you can now turn the desk upright and then roll out the mat to sit on the top. It stays in place by a non-slip backing and it completely covers the entire desktop surface. You'll notice 3 slits in the top part of it that line up with the 3 holes on the desktop, and these are for cable management, so that it can just go straight down into the desk and further assist in a nice clean setup. Overall, the build process was pretty simple. Didn't take too long to do. It is a bit fiddly if you're doing it on your own, as you can see by my rather badly recorded footage, but it can definitely be done on your own. It's a surprisingly solid little desk too. It has solid steel legs that are solid and feel very well put together. They are strong too, allowing the desk to hold a maximum weight of 65 kilograms, which is more than enough for any desktop PC and monitors that you're going to put on it. The legs make the desk feel rigid and sturdy too, which is important for a desk. It does have a little bit of wobble, but it's nothing that would be off-putting. Once it's all levelled off and every foot is making full contact on the floor, I found that the wobble almost stopped altogether. Nobody wants to be typing on a desk that's going to be wobbling your monitor every time you touch it. As you can see, the desk looks fantastic when assembled, and it has a nice modern gamer-esque aesthetic that would fit in most rooms. It's not overly gamer-esque like its bigger brothers with splashes of red and stripes all over them, but it would still look great in any gaming setup. In fact, it actually looks quite similar to its larger brother, which is significantly larger at 160 centimeters in length and slightly deeper, but only by 10 centimeters. This newer, smaller version has been created for those that want a similar setup but on a more restricted size. This desk comes in at 114 centimeters length, 71 centimeters deep at the deepest points, down to 65 centimeters in the middle, as it does curve in slightly to accommodate the user to provide a more ergonomic fit. It's 71 centimeters in height too. It would be nice to see an option to have these with a height adjustable base. There are some, as I mentioned, in the range that have adjustable height options, and even some with motors to lift it from a sitting desk to a standing desk. But with that said, it's still the perfect height for sitting down at. The top of the desk features a full-size mouse pad that literally fits the entire top of a desk. This is nice to see, and it secures into position nicely and feels absolutely fantastic. Ideal for gaming on, as the pad feels nice and soft but durable at the same time, and you can be swiping your mouse all over the place without worries of hitting the edges of a traditional mouse pad. It gives a hint of premium to it too, in my opinion, and it feels like it's going to last long, and sitting at the desk and using it feels nice on your wrists. The mouse pad is interchangeable too, so you can switch it out if you need to, or if you need to deep clean it. And that pretty much wraps up my review of the Arozzi Arena Small Gaming Desk, and it brings me to a few final questions. What are the pros and cons of said desk? Is it worth a price tag? And ultimately, is it something that I can recommend to you guys watching? Let's begin with the pros and cons. Beginning with the pros, it is a nice solid desk. I've seen lots of reviews on this very desk saying it's not very sturdy, but I would somewhat disagree with those. For a desk that sits on 2 legs, it's actually very surprisingly strong. The build design is done in a way to maximise the strength of the legs and base. The working area is nice and spacious, and it's slightly deeper than an average desk, so there's lots of room for your peripherals and your hands. The 3 holes in the top of the desk really do make cable management a breeze, and they do a fantastic job of minimalising cable clutter on your setup. The holes are big enough to have monitor mounts installed straight through them too, meaning that they are multifunctional, and you don't have to then secure the monitor mounts to the back of a desk, which is good for allowing you to keep the back of a desk flush to the wall. That big mat on the top feels fantastic, and it's got a nice level of smoothness. That means you can really move your mouse across it nicely, and being full-sized really would be a huge benefit for intense gamers that like to really swing their mouses around. It feels nice on the wrist too when typing, and just generally feels nice to use. The materials used are nice too and gives it quite a premium feel, which is to be expected for the price point, I guess. That mesh netting or webbing, whichever you want to call it, is a feature seen more and more on gaming desks lately, but it's a very welcome one at that. The one that they use here is nice and solid. It has just the right level of movement and flexibility to allow you to get everything in there, but the 8-point mounting system for it means that it has a reassuring level of tension to keep everything tight to the desk, which means that when you're using it, you're not going to be hitting your knees on it like in some desks with a lower mounted system. Moving on to the cons of the desk, we begin with the build quality again. Now this might seem counteractive to what I've just said in the pros, but it's also got its downsides in that even though it feels nice and premium, it does have some discrepancies. Okay, maybe discrepancies is a bit harsh, but there are bits that feel a tad unfinished. Take these welds here for example. Yes, you could argue that they are functional and provide the strength it needs, but it would be nice to see some nicer welds and possibly even welds running along the length of the panels. There is a noticeable air gap, as you can see circled here and here. The bases are also just simply tacked into place too, and it just looks a bit unsightly. Now for full transparency's sake, these are welds that you will barely ever see when the desk is set up and in use, and you could probably call me quite harsh for pointing it out, but it's my job to do so. The desk certainly feels super solid and will very likely never fail, so please don't let that put any concerns of that into your head. It's just a detail that I have personally picked out on. Another con is also the stability. It's a strong desk and it's very strong and solid, as I mentioned before. In fact, I even mentioned disagreeing with people saying otherwise, but it's important to note that it's never going to be quite as solid as a desk with 4 legs in each corner, and that's just down to basic physics. It does mean that this desk is at risk of rocking a little bit more with the centre of gravity being in the middle. But this is a minor con of a desk, as even with that principle in mind, it's pretty damn solid and you will never likely notice it when using it. And they are pretty much really the only cons that I could genuinely find with this desk. And even then, it's not really necessarily fair to call them cons. The welds are plenty strong enough and they are hidden away, and the fact it has 2 legs rather than 4 is not really just a con, it's just more a design. Which brings me on to the price point of the Arena Small desk. Yes, it's pricey, but actually I think it's pretty good value for money. You can see they've taken elements of a large desk, which has been immensely popular for many years for a reason. And it's very easy to see that this offering is likely going to share a lot of that success too. They have put a lot of thought into the design to make things easier to live with. The holes make it super easy to tidy any setup, even for a complete beginner. The large mat is super nice to work with, and the fact that you can take it off to clean it can only be seen as a bonus. The setup process was probably one of the simplest setups I've ever encountered of any desk build I've ever done in the past. It's only a few steps from being an instant pop-up desk. The build quality is fantastic, if you ignore those limited welds, and it feels super solid and secure and is built to last a long time too. Again, I would have liked to have seen an option to have height adjustable legs, but then that would only increase the price even more, so it's a bit of a null argument in this instance. So, would I say that it was worth a price tag? I'm going to strongly say that it's on the right price point for what you get. I do still think it's a tad on the pricier end, but I can definitely say that you get what you pay for with it. And for me, that would definitely warrant a positive recommendation. And I could exactly do that. I could definitely recommend it to you guys. If you're not going to be spending a lot of time on your desk, or at your desk, or you're on a budget, then this is clearly not the desk for you. If you are looking for something more aesthetically pleasing to fit in with your nice new living room, then again, maybe steer clear of this desk. However, if you are a gamer, use your PC very often, work from your PC, or are a streamer, then this might just be the perfect option for you. In fact, stick some LEDs on the back and you have the perfect RGB gaming desk, because everybody knows that RGB adds at least 5% extra FPS. In fact, speaking of 5%, the awesome folks over at Back to the Office, who sent me the desk into review, have given me a code to give you guys an extra 5% off all orders over £50 site-wide when you enter the code GadgetJoe5 at the checkout, so you can save a little bit more on the cost of a desk too. Make sure you click on the link in the description below to take you to their site to take advantage of the discount code. Ordering through that link also helps me, as I get a tiny little kickback into the channel for every order made using the links in the description. And that pretty much sums it up for me for this video review of the Arozzi Arena Small Gaming Desk. A solid offering that will be the perfect addition to your gaming setup. So it's goodbye from me for now, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.